What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of The Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. It's Tuesday. Time to check out some new releases that are coming out this Friday, September 26th. There's about 500 albums coming out this week. I got 12 on my list for today. There's a bunch of links down below. You got links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlist that I put together every week, and the Patreon page. So make sure you check all that out. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. Like I said in the intro, there's about 500 albums that are coming out this week, but I'm only going to talk about 12 on the show today. So there's something you're looking forward to that I'll have on here. Make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to grabbing. And like always, if you're unable to find these in your local brick and mortar stores, they should all be available online. I'll put links down below in the comment section for them. You can also always go over to the Vinyl Den store on Amazon. All the pre-orders are on there. There's new releases. There's deals on records. All sorts of cool stuff to check out. Something I've been waiting a very long time to get reissued is finally coming out this week. This is Apple by Mother Love Bone. It came out back in 1990. It was their debut and only studio album. Looks like there's two different versions of this. There's a standard black version. There's also an opaque habanero version, which is going to be your indie exclusive. It's going to run you about $28. Apple was a landmark album that really helped lay the foundation for what would become grunge in the late 80s and early 90s up in the Pacific Northwest. This is actually an album that was supposed to be released in March of 1990. Well, unfortunately, a couple days before it came out, lead singer Andy Wood would die of a heroin overdose. And because of that, the release of the album would get pushed back to mid-August. It was really unfortunate because he never got to see how influential this album would end up becoming. I think there's always been a big what-if around Mother Love Bone because, had Andy lived, what would have happened with the grunge scene? Because, of course, Andy dies, Stone Gossard, Jeff Ament, they break off from Mother Love Bone, they form Pearl Jam, and then, the whole scene kind of blows up from there with Nirvana. And if you go back and listen to Apple and Shine, which is the EP that came out in 89, which is also getting reissued this week, there is some grunge elements there. I don't think there's anything close to what Nirvana was doing or what Soundgarden was doing or Pearl Jam. I think what Mother Love Bone was almost like what the Stooges and the MC5 was to punk music. It was the early proto grunge scene. It was very much like laying the seeds for what would become that grunge scene in the next couple of years. So you got Apple and Shine both coming out this week. Both of them are going to run you about $28. So you got that coming out. I probably will grab Apple. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to grab Shine. I do have a bootleg copy of Apple, so that's always my thing, is if I've got an unofficial processing, if an official reissue comes out, my thing is always, even if the bootleg I have of it sounds really good, I'm always going to buy an official processing to replace that unofficial processing I have. So definitely grabbing a copy of that this week. Then you've also got the Marshall Mathers LP by Eminem coming out, released back in 2000. It was his third studio album. This is a 2 LP, 25th anniversary edition. It's going about $51. I've long considered this album, easily one of the greatest rap albums, at least greatest rap albums of the 21st century. I'd probably put this up there as one of the top 5 rap albums of all time. And it's one of the best-selling albums, period, of all time. Sold over 35 million copies worldwide. It was Eminem's first #1 album on the Billboard 200 here in the U.S. It's actually his first of 10 consecutive #1 albums here. So this new 25th anniversary edition does have alternate artwork and has 2 bonus tracks on here also. So these are from the 2000 MTV VMAs. Of course, this is the album that had Stan on there. It also had The Real Slim Shady, The Way I Am, some huge tracks. I think this is one of those albums that, what makes this album so great are not only the big hits on there, which are good songs, but it's also the lesser known tracks on here. I already have a copy of it on vinyl. $51 is a lot for me to drop on it. It's only got 2 additional bonus tracks on there. If it had a little bit more extra than that on there, I probably would grab a copy of it, but we'll see. If I can grab a copy on sale somewhere, maybe I will grab one. There's also a new album from Robert Plant coming out this week. This is Saving Grace. It's his 12th studio album. It's running about $27. So the name of the album actually comes from the name of the band that he's been touring with ever since 2019. And he's been slowly working on this album, I think ever since he started touring with the band. So it's been about 6 years he's been working on this album. And from what I've read, this album has more like a roots rock, folk, blues kind of sound to it, which I think is kind of what Robert Plant has been doing, over the last, decade plus of his solo career. But this is a little bit of a different album. These are all cover songs or reinterpretations of songs from artists that a lot of people out there probably aren't all that familiar with. He's got songs on here by Memphis Minnie, Moby Grape, Blind Willie Johnson, Low, Martha Scanlon, among a bunch of other ones. I think his last couple of solo albums kind of flew under the radar. Not a lot of people talked about him. I thought they were really good, though. It's definitely one I'll check out this week when it comes out. And you've also got the new album from Mariah Carey, Here for It All. It's her 16th studio album. It's going to be on pink vinyl. It's running about $25. This is the follow to her 2018 album Caution, which was met with some pretty mixed reviews when it was released, but commercially still did pretty well. Hit number 5 on the Billboard 200. But from what I've read about this new album, it's supposed to have this like summery kind of feel to it, but it's also supposed to reflect like this journey that she's been on in her personal life over the last decade. There's also guest appearances on it by Anderson .Paak and the legendary Clark sisters. I know commercially, her albums always do well. They always chart well. They always sell a bunch of copies. But to be completely honest, I don't think she's released a really great classic album in probably 20 years. Well, it's the same with that Robert Plant album. It's another one I'll check out this week when it gets released. There's also a new album from Whiskey Myers coming out this week. This is Whomp Whack Thunder. It's their 7th studio album. It's running about $40. So if you're not familiar with the band, they're a southern rock band formed in Texas in 2007. They've slowly begun getting more popular over the last, I think, 4 or 5 releases. Their self-titled album that came out in 2019 hit number 6 on the Billboard 200. That was kind of their big breakthrough album. Well, the album that came out before that, which is called Mud, didn't do quite as well. It hit number 80, I think, on the Billboard 200. I think it actually is probably a little bit better of an album. If you're going to get into the band, if you want to check them out, I'd probably start with Mud and kind of work from there. I'm generally not a country fan, but this is probably the closest that I can get to country music nowadays. Like I said, they're one of those bands that's definitely on the rise over the last several albums. I'll definitely check out the new album when it comes out this week. And then this next album you got is A Love Supreme by John Coltrane. Came out back in 1965. This is the 60th anniversary monophonic edition. It's running about $40. I've long considered this, not only one of the best, but one of the more important jazz albums ever released. And for the 60th anniversary, they're releasing the mono mix of this for the first time, I think in over 50 years. It's all mastered by Ryan K. Smith from the original analog tapes. It's pressed to RTI. I'm sure this thing's going to sound absolutely fantastic. My issue is I already have a couple of copies of this, including a 60th anniversary that I think Verve released earlier this year. It's not the mono mix of it, but I don't really know if I really need another copy of it. But as far as sound quality goes, I'm sure this is going to be rated up there as one of the best you can get of this great album. There's a couple of big jazz releases that are coming out this week. Both are part of the Craft Recordings Original Jazz Classic series. The first one is the self-titled album from the Kenny Drew Trio. Came out back in 1956. So this one's all mastered by Ryan K. Smith. It's pressed to RTI. It's going to run you about $42. So a year after this album was recorded, the trio that made this album would help John Coltrane record his masterpiece, Blue Train. So joining Kenny on piano, you got Paul Chambers on bass, you got Philly Joe Jones on drums. Like I said, that trio, they would become the rhythm section for Blue Train. And then in the 60s, Kenny would move to France, and then 3 years after that, he'd go to Denmark. And it really was in Denmark where he would kind of find his groove and really gain the recognition he would end up having as this great band leader. But musically, wherever he went in his career, I don't think he was ever really able to match what he did on this self-titled album. It is a great album. It's one to check out if you're not familiar with it. And then this next one is one that I'm not all that familiar with. This is the Sonny Criss Orchestra, Sonny's Dream, Birth of a New Cool. So this came out back in 1968. This is also part of the Craft Recordings Original Jazz Classic series. It was also pressed to RTI. Ryan K. Smith didn't do the mastering on this one, though. This one was mastered by Kevin Gray. It's also going to run you about $42. So this is kind of a big band jazz fusion album. I think it's kind of widely seen as one of the masterpieces of 60s orchestral jazz. The arrangement on the album is all done by Horace Tapscott, and it blends West Coast jazz with avant-garde. And from what I read about it, it sounds like a really interesting album. It's definitely one I'll at least stream and check out. And it looks like it's kind of widely seen as one of the more ambitious jazz albums of the later part of the 60s. There's also the self-titled album from the Skatalites coming out this week. This was released back in 1969. This will be on translucent green vinyl. It's got all new alternate artwork on there. It's going to be about $30. The Skatalites were one of those bands that really kind of helped form ska in Jamaica in the late 50s and early 60s. Even though the band didn't form until 1963, these guys all came from the bands that started ska in the late 50s in Jamaica. And even though they were only around for a very short period of time, I think it was like 63 to 65, they ended up being one of the more influential bands of that period in Jamaica. And then early 1965, trombonist Don Drummond would be arrested and convicted for murder of his girlfriend. And then I think the band kind of spiraled from there. Like later in the year, I think it was like midsummer 65, the band would split up and become two different groups from there. They did end up reforming in 1986, and I think they're still together today, even though I think Dorian Schaefer is the only member of the band that's still alive. And it looks like, at least online, it looks like she's keeping the memory of the band alive today. So it's, they're definitely one of those bands that if you're a ska fan, they're definitely the roots of ska music. They're worth checking out if you're unfamiliar with them. So that's coming out this week. And then the last 3 albums I got on my list, these are all the very first 3 albums from Silverchair that's getting reissued. I've got some issues with this first one. The very first one is Frogstomp, came out back in 1995. It was their debut studio album. All 3 of these are all music on vinyl releases. So the very first one's going to be limited to 7,500 copies. It's a 2 LP release. It's going to be on yellow and green marble vinyl. It's going to run about $55, and that's my big issue with this one. In my opinion, it's one of the best debut albums of the 90s. It is a great album, but that's a lot of money to drop on this album. Like, just looking at the music of the album, looking at this album, 30 years after it was released, it's amazing to me to think that these guys were just 15 years old when they recorded this music. And it's a huge album. It hit number 9 on the Billboard 200. It would sell over 2 million copies here in the U.S. It is a great album. It's one I still listen to pretty regularly today, but $55 is just a lot of money for this one album, especially when you can go on Discogs and pick up an older pressing of this album for less money. Next release coming out this week from Silverchair is Freak Show, released in 1997. It was their second studio album. Also music on vinyl release. It's going to be limited to 4,000 copies. It's going to be on red and black marble vinyl. It's going to run you about $40, which is a typical price for a music on vinyl release. Yes, it's still a lot of money, but that's generally where music on vinyl releases run. And I guess I should add that these are always pressed in the Netherlands, so sometimes there's about a week delay in getting them here in the U.S. But Silverchair is often lumped into the 90s grunge scene. I think this is like the last grunge-like album from the band. It's definitely a lot more like alternative rock-centric than their debut album was, though. I think this was the album where the band really tried to focus in on finding their own sound and not sounding as much like Nirvana and Pearl Jam like their first album was. And even though it was released just 2 years after the debut album, it really showed the growth the band had made in such a short period of time. I don't think it's as great as their debut album is, but I think it's a very close second. So that one's coming out, and then the very last album I got is their third studio album, Neon Ballroom, released in 1999. It's limited to 4,000 copies. It's going to be on pink vinyl. It's going to run about $42. And this is a much more experimental album than either of their first 2 albums were. Blend in orchestral and art rock elements into their ever-evolving sound. There's a lot of fans out there that consider this the band's best album, but I think it's probably their most honest and probably their most true to themselves kind of album. It's one I have on vinyl. I haven't listened to it in a while. I definitely need to go back through and check it out again, though. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to grabbing this week. Like I said, I know I'm going to grab that Mother Love Bone Apple. Maybe I'll grab Shine also. I might grab that Kenny Drew album. I got some question marks next to some other ones. Like I said, if I can find that Eminem album on sale somewhere for a couple dollars cheaper, maybe I'll grab that one. But let me know what you guys are looking forward to. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.